Esteban was eaten!
He was swallowed whole?
No! Killed!
When it first arrived in cinemas, Wes Anderson's The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou was met with mixed reviews from critics and bombed at the box office. At the time, this offbeat nautical adventure was a lot for audiences and analysts alike to take in. But in the years since, it's been reappraised as a cult classic. It went from being one of Anderson's least beloved movies to one of his most beloved. On the heels of the sobering, humanistic storytelling of Anderson's previous film, The Royal Tenenbaums, some critics were disappointed by all the colourful fish and slapstick gags in The Life Aquatic. Now, modern audiences recognise that The Life Aquatic is just as sobering and humanistic as The Royal Tenenbaums, it just happens to have colourful fish and slapstick gags as well. The Life Aquatic takes place in a heightened reality. It isn't set in the world we recognise by any stretch of the imagination. In a way, it plays like a live-action cartoon. It even has some stop-motion animated segments of brightly coloured sea creatures, courtesy of Nightmare Before Christmas director Henry Selick. But within the context of that abstract world building, it still has the touching, painful emotions that Anderson's fans are accustomed to.
Why didn't you contact me?
Because I hate fathers and I never wanted to be one.
Eccentric oceanographer Steve Zissou might be the Bill Murray-est character Bill Murray has ever played, except maybe Phil Connors, the quintessential curmudgeon with a heart of gold from Groundhog Day. Steve is a satirical caricature of Jacques Cousteau, complete with the red beanie but with the pipe swapped out for a joint and a trusty Glock at his side. The role makes use of all Murray's strengths as an actor. Steve is the kind of zany comic personality Murray would play in an Ivan Reitman movie, and the kind of nuanced, three-dimensional, deeply depressed human being he'd play in a Sofia Coppola movie, rolled into one character. Murray plays the part in a typically hilarious deadpan style.
Son of a bitch, I'm sick of these dolphins.
Don't point that gun at him. He's an unpaid intern.
Those fucking amateurs. You left your dog, you idiots!
Murray undeniably carries the movie, but he's surrounded by scene-stealing supporting players. Owen Wilson's grieving pilot Ned Plimpton and Cate Blanchett's pregnant reporter Jane Winslet Richardson share one of the sweetest love stories in the Anderson canon. Jeff Goldblum brings plenty of his signature Goldblumisms to the role of Alistair Hennessy, a rival oceanographer who's even more eccentric than Steve.
I'm so pissed. I want to spit. Hugo, tell Carl to load my elephant gun with buckshot.
As Steve's estranged wife Eleanor, the brains behind Team Zissou, Angelica Houston delivers the driest line readings in the movie.
Your cat's dead.
What? Which one?
Marmalade. I'm sorry.
What happened?
A rattlesnake bit it in the throat.
Willem Dafoe gives a hysterically over-the-top turn as the calm, collected German first mate Klaus Daimler, the jealous protege who wishes Steve was his dad and doesn't do a very good job of hiding it.
Don't you know me and Esteban always thought of you as our baby brother?
I've always thought of you two as my dads.
The Life Aquatic was the first Anderson movie not to feature any songs by the Rolling Stones. Instead, the soundtrack is mostly made up of David Bowie hits. There are a couple of original Bowie recordings like Life on Mars and Queen Bitch, but most of the soundtrack's Bowie songs are acoustic Portuguese language cover versions performed on screen by Seu Jorge. Bowie himself was a big fan of Jorge's covers. He said, "Had Seu Jorge not recorded my songs in Portuguese, I would never have heard this new level of beauty which he has imbued them with." Jorge gives the film its own musical identity. His light, breezy takes on Bowie's hits, from Starman to Rebel Rebel to Rock and Roll Suicide, pair perfectly with Anderson's quirky retelling of the Moby Dick story.
I'm going to have to start locking my effing door.
It was locked. I kicked it in.
Contemporary critics derided the goofy humor and shameless weirdness that engulf the film's darker turns. The headline of Roger Ebert's review read, "Whimsy leaves the viewer at sea." But that whimsy makes the movie's deep dive into the human condition more palatable. It's easier to confront the most painful aspects of the human experience, like grief and heartbreak and violence, when they're punctuated by wacky visual gags like Bill Murray tumbling down a flight of stairs, or Willem Dafoe yelling out "Land ho" while his boat is being towed into port.
Ho! Ho!
That's what makes this movie so wonderfully unique. The Life Aquatic is both one of Anderson's silliest movies and one of his most tragic. Steve's shootout with the pirates that board the Belafonte is delightfully ridiculous, but Ned's death, followed by his burial at sea set to the somber sounds of the zombies The Way I Feel Inside, is truly heartbreaking.
In your mind, could you ever be really close to me? I can tell the way you smile.
Those conflicting tones were the reason for the film's initial negative reception. Anderson strikes a tricky mix of gleefully absurdist comedy and harrowing down-to-earth drama that some reviewers rejected on their first viewing. But somehow it works. The fact that the tone shifts from trivial to traumatic at the drop of a dime reflects life. Just as people are blindsided by real-world tragedies, audiences are blindsided by Ned's untimely passing. Some reviews of The Life Aquatic criticized the film's supposedly artificial feel.
I thought aspects of it seemed slightly fake.
But despite its distinctive ironic bite, this is a movie that truly cares about its characters and its audience. At times, Anderson's seafaring soap opera could be accused of being kitschy. At first, the Let Me Tell You About My Boat tour of the Belafonte seems to be little more than a showcase for the impressive cross-section set and the quirk of Anderson's filmmaking. But The Life Aquatic avoids the kitsch label with an abundance of sincerity. At the end of the tour, Ned asks what happened to Jacqueline, whose name has been crossed off the side of Steve's little yellow submarine, and Steve solemnly confesses why he crossed out her name.
What happened to Jacqueline?
She didn't really love me.
Steve is yet another classic Andersonian anti-hero. Anderson's protagonists tend to be comedically unsympathetic. Like Max Fisher and Royal Tenenbaum before him, Steve is easy to love in spite of his faults. He's only brash and insulting and abrupt with people to cover up a deep well of pain. He's not particularly likable, but the audience still roots for him because he's vulnerable.
Bye, Steve.
Don't say that. Even if it's true, don't say that. It's too painful.
Steve acknowledges and makes peace with his shortcomings after reading Jane's less than glowing profile at the end of their tumultuous voyage.
Obviously, people are going to think I'm a showboat and a little bit of a prick. But then I realized that's me. I said those things, I did those things. I can live with that.
On the surface, to use a maritime metaphor, The Life Aquatic is a movie about a sailor's vengeful crusade to vanquish the unidentified shark that ate his best friend. But under the surface, it's really a movie about the struggle to keep it together and act like everything's okay when you're going through a tough time. To use another maritime metaphor, Steve is dealing with a boatload of difficult emotional stuff all at once. It starts with the death of his best friend, but shortly thereafter he meets a young man who could be his long-lost son, who's grieving the suicide of his mother, one of the loves of Steve's life. On top of that, it's clear that Steve's marriage is crumbling and he's on the tail end of his career, considered a has-been by his fading fanbase and by his own crew. Steve's journey comes full circle when he loses Ned in almost the exact same way he lost Esteban. He achieves some much-needed emotional catharsis when he finally finds the fabled jaguar shark. After everything he's been through, and after determining that the shark is beautiful, and after using up all his dynamite, he decides not to kill it in the name of revenge. As Sigur Ros's moving musical opus Sterile Thor kicks in on the soundtrack, Steve breaks down crying. He's comforted by all the people around him as he sums up his worries about his legacy in one line.
I wonder if it remembers me.
Like all of us, Steve just wants to be remembered after he's gone, and finds that he's being forgotten while he's still alive. What The Life Aquatic teaches us, besides the need for regular helicopter maintenance, is that the sadness won't go away. You just have to learn to live with it. Life is relentlessly shitty. The agonizing tragedies just keep coming. When you're reeling from one misfortune, another one will come along. When you're reeling from that misfortune, yet another one will come along. The awfulness of life runs like clockwork, and none of it is easy to deal with. All you can do is, like Steve Zissou, embrace the people who stick by you. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.
I'm watching the cruisers below.